Hi, welcome to my channel. My name is Kat, and today we're going to be doing B is for Birthday, which is a continuation to the Alphabet Murder Puzzle series. So if you're new to the series, this is the second one. A is for Arson was the first one in the series, and if you haven't seen that one, you can check it out in this video. And now we're gonna be doing B is for Birthday. I'm already super excited and I can see that it has a dog, so hopefully it's gonna be about a puppy's birthday or something. If you're not familiar with the series, then one thing I wanna mention is this box contains 2 puzzles of 500 pieces each and they're mixed together. The first challenge is finding which pieces belong to which puzzle and doing both puzzles simultaneously. Let's open the box. Now that we have this booklet, we're gonna read through and see. First we have these instructions, so I'm gonna read those, and then my husband's gonna read the story afterwards. Instructions for detectives. Read the story and complete the 2 puzzles, one of which shows the crime scene and the other further evidence of the crime. Check the puzzles for clues and solve the mystery. Hold the crime solution up to the mirror to read the answer to the mystery, which we don't do here because it's flipped. I just take a picture of it on my camera and just do like the flip of the photo because it's easier that way. I feel like it would be hard to read as you're trying to see it in the mirror. Anyway, let's get into the story now.
B is for birthday.
Making a temporary escape from his mountain of evening paperwork, Detective Ben Spade pulled into the Donut Delight. His mouth watered as he opened the car door into the brisk night air and stepped into Squish. Canine poo was the farthest thing from the chocolate Bismarck he was envisioning. Son of a... Spade's tirade was cut short by the ring of his cell phone. Doggone it, what do you want? He snorted into the phone as he attempted to scrape his offended shoe on the curb. Detective Spade, came a voice over the cell. You're right, this is Officer Kennelly. He could barely be heard over the sound of barking dogs in the background. Yeah, I'm just peachy, said Spade. What's all that racket? It was a birthday party, a bunch of professional dog breeders, until one of the humans turned up dead. They all brought up their dogs with them. Lousy mutts, muttered Spade. You don't like dogs? Not at the moment, he growled. Give me the address. Still donutless, Ben Spade parked under the portico of a massive seafront mansion, the rear side of which was virtually overhanging the rocky shore below. Officer Kennelly met him at the front door. So what have we got? Asked the detective. Carrie Fleetick, male, aged exactly 60, took a heater of the balcony. It looks like he might have jumped. There was a table pulled up to the railing with one of his shoes on it. He may have used it for a diving platform. It's about an 80-foot drop landed on his head. The guy was exactly 60? Yeah, answered the officer. It was his 60th birthday party. He was some kind of big shot judge at that Grand National Dog Show next week. The hostess and the other guests are all prominent dog breeders with entries in that show. Is that why they all brought their prize poochies in them to dinner? Asked Spade. It's weird they treated them like humans. Gave them party hats and all, chuckled Kennelly. How many 2-legged people were in the house? Queried Spade with a hint of sarcasm. Besides the deceased, there was the hostess, the cook, and 3 other dinner guests. I have the 5 of them gathered for you in the living room, said the officer, trying his best to appear efficient. Alright, let's get started then, said Spade as he wearily trudged down the lavish hallway. Spade entered the cavernous living room. He noticed various people and dogs sitting nervously on the expensive furniture. Just as 3 of the dogs began sniffing his shoe, a middle-aged blonde woman, holding a lace hanky to her eyes, approached him. I am Heidi Kibbelmunchen. Such a tragedy to happen in my home, she said with a slight sob. Is there some place we could speak in private? Asked the detective while gently nudging a curious basset hound with his doggy's scented foot. Yes, of course. Please follow me, offered Heidi. Leaving the others behind, the hostess and detective settled into wing chairs into a 2-story private library. They were soon joined by a massive Saint Bernard. That's some dog you have there. Must be close to 150 pounds, said Spade. 175, said Heidi, but he's my little precious tiny tot. He's by my side constantly. Is it alright? He can stay, decided Spade, as long as he stops slobbering on my shoe. Spade continued, how did you know Mr. Fleetick? He was an old friend of mine, ever since I started to breed the big dogs, over 20 years now, recalled Heidi. When I realized he was going to turn 60 right before the dog show, I had to have a little party for him. Was the party going well? Everything was wonderful all through dinner. We all love dogs, so the conversation was quite lively. Everyone gave him a birthday card and we had a cake for him. He seemed a little embarrassed when we all sang, with the dogs howling and all. After he cut the cake, we all adjourned into the living room while Mrs. Pettiker, my cook, cut slices. What happened then? Harry, Mr. Barker, the Yorkie breeder, suggested we gather all the dogs together for a picture wearing their party hats. Everyone was quite enthusiastic about it, except poor Carrie. He thought the whole idea was stupid and announced he was going out on the balcony for a smoke. Spade pondered his next question. How upset was he? Did he seem overly depressed or despondent? Oh no, he was just being Carrie. He was high-strung and opinionated. Sometimes you just had to let him alone. Spade got to the point. When did you first suspect something? After the picture was taken, we went back into the dining room and he failed to join us. I went looking for him and on the balcony and I saw... She began to sob. Take your time, ma'am. I saw a shoe on the balcony table. When I looked down at the ocean, I saw poor Carrie. She was now sobbing on every word. Just one more question. Was everyone present during the taking of the photo? Yes, she said, regaining her composure. Everyone except Carrie was in the living room, and of course Mrs. Pettiker, who was cutting the cake in the dining room. Thank you, Ms. Kibble mentioned. Could you please rejoin your guests and send Mr. Barker in? A short, portly man in his late 50s shuffled into the room with a tiny 4-pound Yorkshire Terrier running circles around him. He flopped himself into a wing chair as the little creature began to sniff at Spade's aromatic shoe. Spade glared, causing the Yorkie to jump into her master's lap and only then begin to snarl. Mildly amused, Spade continued, Mr. Barker, how well did you know Carrie Fleetick? Call me Harry. Not that well. He judged my little digit hair on 3 occasions. She has over 12 championships, but none of them from Carrie. Oh, you just had to love that guy, stated Barker, a little irritated at the thought. Sounds like you two had some problem in the past. It's just the dog world. Carrie was an important judge. No matter how smiley everyone was around him, you would have a hard time finding any breeder that wasn't holding some kind of grudge against him. I don't know of anyone who was that close to Fleetick. When was the last time you saw him tonight? Asked Spade. When he left the living room. Poor guy, I wonder who will get custody of Susie, his basset hound. I'm sure she'll be well cared for, Spade assured him. Thank you. Could you please send Mrs. Pettiker, the cook? Ivana Pettiker was a woman in her late 60s. She was stooped and walked with a slight limp. Did you know Mr. Fleetick? I used to be a breeder myself of fine standard poodles. I'm the one who got Carrie Fleetick started as a judge. And now you're a cook, asked Spade, sensing some resentment. Miss Heidi gave me a job after I lost the canal. 1 or 2 bad showings was all it took to lose everything. I don't want to speak ill of the dead, but I am only one of many who would still be in business if it wasn't for his narrow-minded opinions. Mrs. Pettiker, did you notice anything unusual this evening? Everything seemed normal. Lots of sucking up to Carrie as usual, since they all had dogs competing in the upcoming show. There was one thing though. When everyone was in the living room posing the dogs, I heard someone outside. It sounded like a man shouting. What was he shouting? It sounded like down fast, down fast. If it was Carrie, I guess he got his wish. He went down and fast. Spade jotted a quick note. Was there anyone else in the house or on the grounds? Every single person was in that living room, except Carrie. That'll be all, Ivana. Please could you send in Mr. Facchetti? Willie Facchetti was a slightly built man in his late 40s who looked like a before ad for a 90-pound weekly. At his side was a large muscular black Doberman with extremely intense eyes. Sitzen, said Willie softly. The dog immediately sat motionless. That's the most obedient dog I've seen today, complimented Spade. My Schnitzel here is not just a show dog. He is trained by the German police. He has many obedience and agility ribbons. Spade continued. Had Mr. Flitwick ever judged Schnitzel? No, not as of yet. He had judged many of my other Dobermans, not with such great results. He was a very tough judge, but fair. You got along well with him then? I didn't know him very well at all. I thought tonight would be a good chance to change that, but I guess that will never happen now, said Facchetti with a slight note of disappointment. You were in the living room with the rest of the guests for the picture taking? Yes, said Facchetti. Then I went to the dining room for some cake. That's when all the commotion started. Thank you. I have no other questions. Could you please send in Mr. McLeish? Ty McLeish looked like Winston Churchill, a foot shorter and rounder. His sweaty jowls were only matched by that of the bulldog that followed him into the room. As McLeish slowly lowered himself into the wing chair, his dog began chewing on Spade's shoe. Nice dog. Now go away, yelled Spade. My Brutus is such a good boy, said McLeish between coughing spells. I'm sure he is. Has your Brutus ever been judged by Mr. Flitwick? Several times, never with much luck. He was a hard man, that Flitwick, never impressed by how many ribbons a dog had achieved. He lost us a best show at Westminster, had the nerve to congratulate us on second place. Do you think he had a reason to commit suicide? Like a lot of us, all he had was his dog, the Basset Hound, but I can't see him simply leaving her like that. She was just in the next room. It's unbelievable. Were you in the living room for the dog picture? Yes, we were all there except Flitwick. He left his dog with us for the picture, but Flitwick went outside. When they were done posing, I went back to the dining room where the cook was kind enough to give me a third piece of cake. Thank you, Mr. McLeish. You may join the others in the living room. As McLeish labored out of the room, Officer Kennelly entered. A few things aren't adding up, said Kennelly. We found some small blood stains on the balcony table. Is that all? No, the coroner says the head trauma from the fall was the cause of death, but he had some tears on his jacket and some small puncture wounds on his arms that were not consistent with injuries from a fall. Are we absolutely sure that there was no one else in the house or on the grounds? Absolutely confirmed, said Kennelly. The only ones here besides Flitwick were in the living room or dining room. Well, we've really stepped in it this time. Unless maybe we have to consider everyone in the house one more time. Spade thought for a moment. Have the evidence on my desk in the morning. Tell everyone not to leave town. If this wasn't a suicide, we might have to make a caller.
Now that the story is complete, let's get into the puzzle. Since I don't know what the picture is, I only made 3 piles: miscellaneous, text, and edges. Since I don't know which pieces are in which puzzle, I will also not know what part is the top and what part is the bottom. The only part of the edge I think I got right is the pieces with the text. Next, I moved on to the text pile, since that should be easier due to the background and font differences. Here I realized that I have the left one flipped, so I turned it around. Some parts have distinct patterns, so I'm looking through the pile and finding those pieces first. Based on the bottom edge and some pieces from the left puzzle, I can tell that there are a couple of dogs there. The right puzzle is almost done. I was trying to finish up as much of the staircase here as I could. Now I realize this is the dog from the box. At first, it was not as obvious to me as the previous puzzle. The previous one I think I solved as I was finishing up the puzzle pieces because it was kind of obvious. This one, you definitely have to do a little bit of reading through the puzzle and think about the story to make sense of it. Should I go through the clues first, or should I just say what I think actually happened? I'm just gonna go in the order that I figured it all out. First, I read all of the cards that Carrie got for his birthday. I was looking through all the signatures to try to connect back to the story. First thing that caught my eye in the left puzzle right away was that the Doberman was not on it. You could see that there was some sort of certificate from him, as well as the card that Carrie got from his owner, but he wasn't pictured in the photo, which was at the time of the crime. Next thing I saw was the coroner's report, which mentioned that there were wounds made by an animal, probably a canine, which was already mentioned at the end of the story as well, so I remembered that part. But now, why would this dog attack Mr. Carey? I'm just gonna call him Carey. It's hard for me to pronounce these last names, so I'm just gonna call them all by first names. We're that close. The Doberman's name was Schnitzel, so you may ask, why would Schnitzel attack Carrie? Now, at that point, I saw something kind of interesting. I saw this little report on the side while you were out. It talks about how all police dogs have a trigger word, and that floss is a very common trigger word. So then I was like Foss, where did I see that before? I saw that somewhere. And I looked back at the cards and I saw that William's card had the name Foss where all the dogs were. So you would think that his name was Foss. So I was a little confused for a second because I thought his name was Schnitzel. So I looked back at the story and I realized that Carrie didn't ever judge this dog. So I'm assuming that he's never met him. And if he read that the name of the dog was Foss on the card, he would probably assume that was the dog's name. So whenever he was alone with Schnitzel, he would call him Foss, thinking that that was his name, right? So if he was just out there smoking on the balcony, chilling, and he suddenly sees Schnitzel, and he's like, oh, your name's Foss, right? And this police-trained Doberman comes up and he hears the word Foss. He's like, okay, I have to attack. And the only person there is Carrie, so he's like, okay, I have to attack you. Which I find interesting though, if he's the one saying it, if he would attack him. But anyway, so he attacks him, he gets those marks, and he probably falls over the balcony by accident, and the end. So that was my train of thinking. Like I said, confirmed by the fact that he was not in the photo on the left, and the card, and all of the other evidence. Also the blood. There was blood on the balcony. It would be weird because if he just fell over, why would it be there? It doesn't make sense. That is what I think happened. Now back to my husband to read the solution, so we'll see if I'm correct.
The solution. Detective Spade suspected that Carrie Fleetick had not committed suicide, and he was right. The puncture wounds on his body were dog bites. He was attacked by a dog on the balcony that forced him up on top of the balcony table to defend himself. While Fleetick was up there, he would most probably slipped and fell to his death. But which dog was it? Every living being in the house was accounted for except one, Schnitzel. Mr. Facetti's Doberman was not in the picture with the rest of the dogs. He is the only dog that could have attacked Mr. Fleetick. But why? This was not exactly a tragic accident. Willie Facetti's Doberman had been trained by the German police, who commonly used the word Foss as an attack command. An examination of the birthday cards showed that each had been signed by the person and their dog. All of the names matched, except Facetti's Schnitzel. His card was signed from himself and his faithful Foss. With his card, Facchetti was setting the stage for his dog to attack. When the Doberman followed Fleetick onto the balcony, Fleetick must have referred to him by the name signed on the birthday card, by calling him Foss. He was actually signaling the highly trained police dog to attack. Mrs. Pettiker overheard him yelling, "Down Foss, not down fast," as she had thought. Further examination of the upcoming dog show schedule indicated that the only breed scheduled to be judged by Mr. Fleetick was the Dobermans. When confronted with the evidence, Willie Facchetti broke down. He admitted that he intended his Doberman to attack Mr. Fleetick. However, Facchetti figured he could step in and save Fleetick by calling off the dog before he could do much damage. He thought that eliminating Fleetick from the judging would improve the chances of his beloved Schnitzel to become best in breed, if not best in show. Facchetti didn't count on Fleetick being on the balcony by himself when he was attacked, much less of falling to his death, which is why Mr. Facchetti will probably spend the rest of his life in the doghouse.
So as you heard, everything was correct. The only thing I didn't mention in my explanation was the yelling of the down fast instead of down fast part. That's because I forgot that part of the story, honestly. It further makes sense with the rest of it to prove to the detectives that he was yelling out at Foss, which was how the dog attacked him. This one's actually, I think, more fun than the other one, just because it was a little bit more investigating I had to do, but it wasn't too challenging. I still find the escape puzzle series a lot more challenging, so I'm just glad that this one, it's all about the puzzle, and then in the background, it is about the solving. Let me know in the comments below if you have ever tried this series or if you would after seeing this video. Thank you so much for watching, and I'll see you next time. Bye!